crazy things. So this is 971's 2013. Any, I guess, what do people see on just looking at the photo? Like, if this was the scouting photo we had, what would we start looking at for this robot?
So I can see that they like get the frisbee from the bottom, but how do they suck it in?
Is there like a channel in the back that pushes up the slider, and then the flywheel launches it, or how does it back?
So yeah, so let's look at things. So yeah, so flywheel launches it, right? So that's that little tread piece right there is part of their shooter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, there's like this gap, and you're like, okay, how does that make any sense? I agree. So then you're like, okay, so then so I guess so starting out, if this is like, if we're looking at this robot, if we've never seen it before, it's in the pit and we just don't know what's going on. I normally start at Drivetrain, right? That's one of the things just to kind of get in your head, because if you don't have Drivetrain, every once in a while you'll be really confused how something works, and you're like, oh wait, they're swerve, they can do something different, right? Or like, oh, they plan to be Mechanum and they can intake on the side. That's normally a bad idea, but teams will do it anyway. So knowing it's tank, you know there's probably not any sort of weird side mechanism, right? Because it's 6-wheel tank, you can see it, 4-inch tires, the little blue nitrile, blue tread, whatever it's called.
I do see how they adjust the angle of the shooter, like with that.
Oh yeah, I
and
see.
then reset the hinge.
So where you're like, so yeah, so going up, you normally would try to figure out how they get frisbees. That's normally part of the goal, and then you figure out how they like store them and shoot them, right? So
I can see how like they would store them, but I don't know how they like get the stored frisbees in storage into the shooter. Does it like go through the back and just come up like that, or?
It's interesting. So to get them from the floor, you eventually see like there's a gear here, right? So this whole thing in front is their arm. So this flips down.
Oh,
so like
okay.
this little plate here gets almost to the floor, and this roller, this black roller, is what brings the frisbees in, and they bring it in to these green wheels, which does the centering.
Oh.
So like if you imagine this whole thing brought down, there's like a video of it somewhere that we'll get to in a second. But if you imagine this whole thing flipped down, when they bring the frisbee in, it shoots it to the sides to get it in the center, and then from this little ramp thing, when this is down, it can go up into this ramp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it's confusing. And it definitely makes more sense when you see the video. But you can kind of see in the picture, it's like this big circle, and you're trying to figure out why do they have this giant, like who built a robot in a giant circle, right? Most of the time, anytime something's built in a giant circle, you assume there's going to be some relative rotation. So kind of like the circular feeders from this year, right? How like 148 had like the Spindex or whatever you want to call it. That's what they're doing with the frisbee in here.
So there's like a mechanism that flips the frisbee and feeds it into the shooter.
So the mechanism is this big circle is a big like it's a very stout like kind of squat spiral. So they spin, the frisbee enters here, and it goes around.
Oh, okay.
And it comes back into like a little slot. And then yeah, there's a little like door thing that you can kind of see, like this pivot back here, like comes down, grabs the frisbee, and then goes back up, fires it, goes down, grabs the next frisbee, and it kind of does that over and over again.
Okay, that makes sense.
I believe there's a video somewhere. That's not the correct video. This video probably shows it, but there's also a video somewhere else.
Instructions.
Oh no, this video does. That's all. That actually doesn't end up being a poster robot. So here you can kind of start seeing the spiral. So the frisbee's like caught in this rim, and there's little.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So it's going all the way around. Yeah, so little spiral there. So it's this inner tube is what's powered. And the Frisbee is caught in the lip here and caught on this wire run here. So something like this is things that like most FRC teams would, like if we tried to build this, like how would we even figure out how to bend this, right? They have a bent spiral tube wire going all the way down. Like there's definitely a way to do it. It would just be super annoying. Like you could probably like wrap it around a pipe if you wanted to. And like there's different small pipe benders you can get that can kind of get you close to that. But doing a full spiral is definitely tricky. All just random things to notice. 971 used to run these big fans on top of their sims to cool them down. Less important now that we're brushless, but very useful back then. Like they swore by it. They ran it on most of their robots. There's their full custom driver station with a bunch of arcade buttons.
Nice. Duct tape.
Enjoy this. Alright, where's the actual how this works? That thing is what grabs the Frisbee and puts it up each time.
Okay, now stick this thing on and see if it's better. Okay, wait, can we disable the robot?
We'll adjust.
We want to make it.
Wow, that's fast. That's a lot. I thought it was.
Thing on this robot that as I say that, they're doing all of this. There's a lot of crazy on this robot, but there's their angle adjust is actually really
That intake's a lot faster than I was going through.
Yeah, they do a lot on speed. Okay, so this is where it gets weird. So you see this arc, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a motor that these like 4 bolts right here are mounting a motor with a shaft spinning through where this little black thing is. So this is where this right here is doing their angle adjustment, right?
Oh, so it moves on that. Okay.
But the question is how. So this is actually one of the methods of motion that we've never probably, I don't think we've ever talked about. So normally we would, like most teams would do this with either like a curved rack, like it's kind of like, it's basically just like a hood, right? You're moving across this angle.
Mm-hmm.
You could do a curved rack. You could have you could have something else pushing the angle, or there's versions that have like a lead screw. You could do a belt of some sort if you wanted to, right? You could imagine like kind of like a curved version of the of how we did the forks would work, right? Mm-hmm. It would be kind of awkward, but you could do it. That's probably not a bad way to do it, actually. But what they do, because 971's always wanting to get like really fine control and have very little backlash. Basically, this is just a steel cable that's mounted on both ends, and the way it's wrapped, I'm gonna say the wrong word because I haven't thought about this. I'm doing this on the fly. I believe it's a capstan. I believe that's the right word, but I could also be wrong. Basically, there's a wrapped spiral of wire, and this is actually a very similar to how a lot of medical robots do their motion. Like it's that precise.
Wow.
But it works really well. It's zero backlash. So like you basically you cannot move their angle adjustment without moving the motor at all, basically. Which is convenient. It's probably overkill for most FRC applications, but seems to work well enough. It definitely did. I don't think it had any.
High goal. Here comes 971. This one's going to be a shootout. 971, 973 on opposite ends of the field. 971 looks like they're dragging one of their climbing hooks. That is going to be costly come the end of the match. Looks like they're still able to score and shoot. got here. It is a deep field. Here comes.
Okay. Oh, I didn't sign into on chip, so that's I know. Does anyone else have anything they didn't notice about that robot already? I think that's most everything. I don't know what the CAD's going to show us that doesn't. If it will actually load. Okay, well, while it's loading. Yeah, I mean, that intake is actually one of the cooler intakes, honestly. Like, there's a lot of, if you have that, you can do a lot of other things pretty nicely. It's kind of annoying because it has a bumper gap. I don't know how you build that without a bumper gap, without like going under the bumper, I guess, but that gets awkward. There's probably a version that does that well. Right, you can imagine if you raise this front bumper even without a gap, you like put something down that shoots it back to a ramp that starts actually underneath.
Yeah.
That gets weird because your frame rail and stuff is different, but there's almost certainly a version that allows that. That's one of the cool things with this game object. It was so thin that you could pass it under things, right? You could like you could still have a frame rail and then in theory like get rid of this bottom section or something and still get a frisbee under it. Hey, it loaded. Okay. Yeah, so you can see this thing here. So yeah, the way you have these multiple wraps of cable, and then as it rotates, it just winds and unwinds along this path. So it's kind of like it's basically just like a cable-drawn elevator, except with instead of having this in the actual winding is done in the middle of the path. Oh yeah, and they were doing sheet metal T-nut things back in 2013.
Oh wow.
But that's one of the earliest versions I've seen of this. And this is the middle version, like 148 was using for a little bit, right, where they're not off.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. But yeah, that's super early. I didn't notice they were even doing that back then. Did they do that for their... Oh yeah, they did that for the whole spiral too. The entire spiral is just sheet metal. That's cool. So those are flat pieces of sheet metal that they mount into the different holes that set the angle for them. All right, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different pieces of sheet metal that set the angle inside. Oh, and then yeah, these side rollers have to be there to kind of shoot the frisbees up into this middle thing so it can actually grab on the tube here. There's nothing else. Nope. Yeah, so those just launch it basically into this thing. That is cool. And then I don't know how... Is there like an extra wheel somewhere?
Yeah, like is it like pushing or like turning it to go in? Because it lifts it up.
Oh no, that wheel's just big enough that when this extends, it pushes this down a little bit and that gets it into the shooter.
Oh, okay.
That wheel's just large enough for that. So yeah, so it does a little over 90 degrees or so of contact with the shooter wheel. And that's enough to drive it out. That's cool.
Also, I think it's at an angle, so it would also like kind of fall down into it.
Yeah, it would probably fall once it lifts up. It would fall a little bit through that that would make sense too. Yeah, and then they just had their climbing hooks were just on like drawer slides.
Yeah.
And they had little latches, and they were just sprung up and then pulled down somehow. I don't know how they were pulled down, but somehow they were pulled down. I'm confused. How does that?
Are those latches?
Yeah, so that's how it stores down, but I'm not sure how it doesn't interfere with stuff. Right? Like this gets some version of that gets pushed down, or does it? Oh, maybe it doesn't. I guess maybe this whole tube doesn't move. So yeah, I guess this tube is the only part that moves. There's some version of this for the string. Yeah, I don't know exactly what. Yeah, they don't have the string path catted, so I don't know where they're actually pulling. Oh, it gets pulled to here. And that shaft runs somewhere. Yeah, that little pulley is doing that's like the winch pulling them down when they go to climb, but I have no idea where that's powered from. Somewhere. But yeah, all sorts of cool sheet metal structures to build up where their arm is mounted and things. 971 is one of the best sheet metal teams in the world. Cool. Wait, what's happening there? What is that wheel? What is that wheel? What? Oh, no, yes. Is that the wheel when this is down?
To get it in.
That gets it fully in. That gets it fully seated in the back. Because that's past the. That's what takes it out of the little spiral loop and everything.
Oh, gotcha.
Because yeah, this back circle is when it's flat is past this back circle here. So it has to like bring it slightly out of the helix path to bring it up. That's cool. Yeah, they build crazy robots. Like all the sheet metal structures up here to reinforce everything. Yeah, like these overlapping cross plates. That's kind of cool. Oh. Yeah, the intake arm was driven by a single side, so they just have this one gear here is driving the whole. My zoom is always weird and odd shape. I forget which way to go. Backwards. Yeah, so that gear drives the whole arm, so they don't have it driven on the other side at all. This side is just free to rotate, but it's stiff enough with multiple crossbars that it's fine. Yeah, it's cool that you can see the angle that these wheels get when they come down to be able to slide it over. And then yeah, with just that front and those little ones, they're able to get it all the way up and into there. That is very cool. And something crosses somehow. Oh, there's a gear in here. Let's see if I can see it. Hide. Yeah, so there's gears right here to do the reverse.
Oh, okay.
So these are getting powered. This belts to this side, and then this gear belts to the other side, so it's spinning in the opposite direction. That's cool. Okay.